All right, let's talk about jump starting Dodge Challenger, Dodge Charger, etc., where you have the battery in the trunk, right? So battery's in the trunk. Can you go into the trunk and jump start it from the trunk? Absolutely, you can. It's a pain in the ass. I wouldn't recommend it. You can trickle charge and jump start your vehicle from the front because we have terminals up here, right? So first we have our positive terminal right here, okay? That's under the cover there. And then we have this right here. That's for your ground, okay? That's chassis ground right there, okay? So we'll talk about jumper cables. If you have a pair of jumper cables like this, okay, I got these for free. I've just had these sitting around for a number of years, okay? These are made in China. They're really, really cheap. Do not buy a pair of jumper cables that has sleeves, okay? Because when you go to squeeze these things, right, the sleeves will very often slip off. Like here's a good example right here of the sleeve that's already kind of slipping off, and we can slip it back, you know, and you don't want sleeves slipping around because this thing can like slip out of your hand and like, you know, go like that and drop and so forth. This is, I want to say about maybe a 10 gauge cable, okay, made in China, really cheap, 10 gauge wire here. And why does that matter, okay? So the thicker the gauge, the longer the distance, but the thicker the gauge, the more amperage it can carry without overheating, okay? So the way that gauge works is like the smaller the number, the thicker the cable. The higher the number, the smaller the cable. So I helped my friend, you know, jumpstart his Lexus with my Honda Odyssey. And, you know, when he fired up his engine, it pulled so many amps, okay? So many amps across this cable that these were so hot when I went to touch this thing. It was so hot, I couldn't, it like burned my hand. I couldn't even hold it, okay? Why? Cheap, crappy cable, gauge is too small, right? So if you have cables like this, honestly, I wouldn't use them. You know, I mean, I keep these around for other purposes, but not for jumping vehicles, right? Like, I'm not going to throw this away because these are good, you know, just for DC voltage or whatever, right? So what do I recommend, right? I recommend a 2 gauge setup. So any jumper cable you can get that's 2 gauge, all right? So you can see here that this says 2GA on it, right? These are super thick. This is a 20-foot cable. I mean, you know, 2 gauge is huge. It's huge, okay? Solid copper cores, right? So you can kind of see in there. This has copper here. This is plasti dipped, okay? So there's no sleeves on this. That's what you want. You don't want the sleeves, okay? You want something that's plasti dipped. It doesn't even have to be dipped, okay? At all. You want something that has some teeth, but also a hole right here in the middle. What's this hole for, right? This hole is for what they call doing a clamp back. Clamp back is where you take the cable, and I'll just drape this off here. It's where you take this and you stick it like that, okay? Why? It holds on there, right? So this is never going to come in contact with this guy, or it shouldn't, right? Because it's, you know, it's up like that, right? That's called a clamp back, and that's important. I'll explain why that's important when we actually go to the vehicle to do some work. The other nice thing about this is, like, let's say your wife takes your car out or something, and she needs to jump, and she doesn't really remember, and she doesn't care to remember, you know, how to do it. This is going to help. This is going to help. This will tell you if you have the polarity reversed on the jump that you're trying to perform, okay? So the shorter end that comes out of this guy, this shorter end goes to the dead vehicle, okay, dead vehicle, and the longer end goes to the donor vehicle, all right? This will also tell you what the battery voltage is, okay, that's coming through, which is great. You know, how much does this cost? $58, okay? 58 bucks, 60 bucks. It's totally worth it. You know, this is by Duralast, obviously, but there's other companies that make really good ones. I'll put some links in the description to this particular set here, as well as some other good sets that you can pick up. And you're like, well, I don't really need 20 feet. Well, like, why 20 feet? Okay, 20 feet's important, right? Because on the Challenger, on the Charger, you know, we've got terminals in the front and we've got the battery in the rear. So technically, you can jump the car from the front or the rear. If you're on the freeway in a shoulder and you need a jump, no problem. It can be jumped from the front or the rear. But if you got a car like this, the battery is only in the front. There's no battery in the rear. There's no terminals in the rear. Okay, so if you want to jump this, you got to go hood to hood. You can't do that on the freeway with a bunch of traffic while you're sitting in the shoulder. You can't go hood to hood. You can't go side to side. So you need a 20-foot cable, right? You're going to park behind the van and you're going to run that cable all the way to the front, right? So that's the reason you need a long set of jumper cables for those type of extraneous circumstances. The other nice thing is that these cables do come with a soft bag that you can put them in and then set it down in your trunk, lay it flat, and it's not going to slide around. It's going to grip to the carpet pretty well, and you'll be good to go. So I talked a little bit about trickle charging. So you can get a trickle charger. I got a battery tender here, link to buy this. This will charge lithium iron phosphate batteries, okay? So if you have lithium in your motorcycle or your car, or even like a Power Wheels, like your kids got Power Wheels, right? This will charge all that. And trickle charger, you can hook it straight up to these terminals, right? So always positive first, then your negative, okay? And make sure that this, when you're attaching the positive, that this negative isn't grounding on something, okay? So you want to use two hands, or you want to do what I call the clamp back, which is where you clamp it back here, right? You clamp it back here on the cable, but don't actually pinch the cable, okay? You just put it like that. It's not pinching, right? Where it's at right there, the clamp back. Then you'll do your positive, then you'll come around, you'll grab your negative, and you'll hook it up to your terminal right there. All right. So we got that going. So let's talk about, what's the proper procedure for jumping. How do I know this? Well, because my dad taught me this when I was a kid. Although a lot of people, their dad might not know, they might not know, they were never taught, right? So here we've got this side. So we're gonna do a clamp back on here. All right, I'm gonna do a clamp back on here. We'll do it right there. And then I put a towel down just to prevent scraping, right? So, okay, what's the first, start of this procedure? Red to dead, okay? Red to dead, right here. So we're gonna come in and we're gonna clamp our red to dead right here. All right, now sometimes it's a little tricky to get that on there and it might pop off, but that looks pretty solid. Red to dead, okay? Now we've got my clamp back here, and I'm doing this with one hand. Normally you're gonna have two hands, obviously, so it's gonna be a lot easier. And now we're just gonna set this guy right here. That's fine. We can leave it right there, okay? Red to dead and red to donor, okay? Now we're gonna come down here, we're gonna pick up our red here, and we're gonna do red to donor. And, should I do a clamp back on this side? Probably. I'll do a clamp back on that side. All right, now we're gonna do red to donor. Here's my donor vehicle. This has the healthy battery, okay? Make sure that, right? So we're gonna come in here and we're gonna clamp our red one on here, okay? Like that. Now, okay, we come over here, check that side, make sure the black is good. The black's not touching anything, it's good. Now we're gonna do here, black on this side to the battery, black to the donor. Okay, black to, yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, black to donor. Okay, sorry, I thought that was my car doing that. All right, so we got that, and now we've got black to dead. So we're gonna come over here, and we're gonna do our black to dead, okay? To the chassis ground, all right? So we're gonna come in here, we're gonna do it to the chassis ground. Now you notice, no sparks. There were no sparks flying, all right? And, it looks good here. All right, 12.4 volts on the display, 12.5. All right, that's where we want to be. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Normally, when the car's running, that should pump up to about 14 volts while the car's running, okay? But it did definitely read between like 12.5, 12.8, somewhere in that range when the car's not running, okay? And there were no sparks. Now, why is that important? All of your electronic devices, the ECU, the computers, the control modules, your radio, everything, okay? It's all powered off the positive side of the battery, right? And if you hook up your grounds first, and then you go to hook up your positive terminal, sparks are gonna fly. When that happens, there is a chance that you can fry any electronic devices that are connected. Obviously, more modern cars have safety measures in place and things like that to prevent that from happening. Still, there's a chance. But red to dead, red to donor, black on donor, black on dead, okay? But chassis, you don't hook this on the dead vehicle, never hook the black to the negative terminal on the battery. If you do that, bad things will happen. Your cables will get extremely hot. You could risk shorting. You could risk overheating or blowing batteries. There's obviously a lot of risks. I'm just giving you a couple, but you can do research and go into like much more detail on what the downsides are to doing that. But essentially, this is the method you're going to use to jump. You want this car to be running, to actually be charging the battery at about 14 volts or so, 14.8, somewhere in that range. And then you'll come over here and you'll start this car up. Trickle charging, same way. You're going to hook your positive up here first, and then you're going to hook your negative over here. And it's going to trickle charge without any issue. You don't have to pop your trunk and pull your floor mat up and do it directly on the battery. You can trickle charge from right up here without any issue whatsoever. But the one thing you'll want to note is when you're using a trickle charger, you're going to want to plug that trickle charger in. So we'll go ahead and plug that in real quick here. And before we hook the trickle charger up to the vehicle, before we hook these up, you want to check your settings. You're going to make sure it's on 12 volts. Oh, look, it's on lithium. I don't have a lithium battery in my car. So we're going to hit select, and we're going to change it to AGM flooded. Okay. And if you want to change the voltage to 6 volts, you push this. If it's hooked up to the vehicle, right, you cannot alter these settings while it's hooked to the vehicle. And that is for safety reasons. That is to prevent a child from coming along or somebody accidentally stepping on this or something and changing these settings while it's actively hooked up to the battery. So it's a kind of a fail-safe mechanism there. So I will definitely, put some links in the description. But if you are just driving around town, grocery store, and you're not really driving, you're not going on the freeway that much, you're probably going to want to trickle charge your battery a little because the sound system in these cars with the 11 speakers and the two 10-inch subs and the amplifier and all that, it drains power like crazy. Same thing in my Honda. It's got the Blu-ray, 16 speaker surround sound system, like ridiculous, and all the electronic sliding doors, electronic tailgate and everything. So I do end up having to trickle charge this quite frequently because the battery just can't quite seem to get above 80% unless you're doing long freeway driving. With the short drives and the stop and go, it can't get to a full charge. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative, and I'll catch y'all later.